Hey everyone, welcome to the Nolan Rossi podcast. I'm chuckling a little bit right now because currently, as I'm doing this introduction, it's early in the morning before my family is awake. And that, I guess, seems to be a theme with this one because today I'm presenting an interview with my friend Jared McGhie. I met Jared, years and years ago because he was a tour manager. I was running sound. And he was a tour manager for an artist that we traveled for, quite a few years around the world, actually, because Jared is from Australia. And he's got a remarkable story because he grew up in Australia, but then he played college baseball in the States. Then he became a tour manager. And now, when this interview happened, he's actually in Antarctica with a team there from Australia that is doing research and studying the area there. When I found out that he was doing this, I had to talk to him. One of my favorite Jared stories was we played a show in New York, and we had gotten back to the hotel after the show, but a large group of us were kind of itching to just go into Manhattan to soak up the city one more time. And as tour manager, you're tasked to figure out the logistics of moving people. And here we are, maybe 11 o'clock at night. How do you get, maybe a dozen people all down into Manhattan? You're going, are we going to need a few Ubers or taxis? What's the best way? Well, as we were thinking through this and Jared was trying to sort it out, at our hotel, a limo pulls up and a wedding party gets out. And I look at Jared and I just see kind of like that light bulb moment. He respectfully waits for the wedding party to leave, and then he approaches the driver of the limo and said, hey mate, is this the end of your day? And the driver said, yeah. And the next thing I knew, we're all getting into this limousine that's got, open bottles of champagne and some food left over. And we get this star-studded drive right into Manhattan, right into the heart of it. And getting out of a limo in the middle of Manhattan is a pretty fun feeling. And that's a great example of one of the things I respect about Jared. He responds to life and he reacts not carelessly, but really thoughtfully, as I've seen him been on this journey to decide to go down to Antarctica for a year when he has a family, kids, and a wife. Back home, I said, not only is this a great adventure to be in Antarctica, but it's a great adventure of life to navigate with all of the family and interpersonal decisions and experiences that come along with that. So like this intro that is happening early in the morning, you can probably hear my morning voice. I'm talking a little bit quieter. The interview, because of our extreme time difference, I was up at 4 a.m. To chat with Jared. It was the end of his day. It was the very beginning of my day. And so you can hear my kind of quiet voice. The production just feels a little different. I have to point that out. Just the audio nerd in me wants to name that as you're listening to it. But you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Jared. He's incredibly inspiring. I walked away from this with so much respect for him and what he's doing and the whole team, and a really great appreciation for how he's handling family life and for everyone back home that's supporting him. So without further ado, I'm going to present to you this interview, this conversation with Jared McGhie. Enjoy. Oh man, it's good to see you, my friend.
You too, mate. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh man, I've been watching what you're doing from afar, and it's just extraordinary. I mean, I feel like I actually think there's probably a lot of parallels as we get into the details of your preparation and motivation. But it feels like I've got a friend that has entered the space program, and has
really?
given themselves over to this great cause.
Awesome.
I mean, you've certainly dedicated a lot of time. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into what you're doing. And I only see a small slice of it from afar. But fascinating story. Why don't we start by just telling me and the people that are listening where you are right now?
Yeah, so currently I'm based in Antarctica, in an Australian base called Davis Station. Australia has 3 continental Antarctic bases and 1 sub-Antarctic base on a place called Macquarie Island. So yeah, currently I'm based at Davis Station and we'll be here up until December. Hopefully, fingers crossed, all things going to plan. You never know down here. And we arrived in November last year, so I'll be here for approximately a year plus or minus travel. It's a good stint. Certainly getting to see the full gamut of Antarctica.
So your role is a carpenter in this, but this is a scientific station. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about what goes on there in terms of the scientific research, and then what your role is, what your day-to-day is there as a carpenter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically the Australian presence in Antarctica is solely for scientific purposes. There's so much untapped land, there's so much unknown entities around what makes up Antarctica. How does it apply to the world? You know, whether it's climate change, whether it's sea ice, atmosphere, the weather conditions, it plays such an integral part, but yet because it's not a habitated country, as it were, you know, it weighs so much into so many other things around the world. So, you know, Australia, you know, they want to try and understand, you know, just all the different levels of it, basically. So some of the keystone projects that Australia are focusing on. So at Casey Station, one of the other stations, one of the big flagship research projects they're doing is the Million Year Ice Core project. And basically what that is they're every year during the summer season, it's really the only time that you can traverse safely through the continent. Through winter, it's just a whole different level of crazy. So in summer, you know, we traverse across the continent to a certain spot where the ice shelf is around 3,500 meters deep. I'm just trying to convert that to miles for you. I think it's about 2 miles deep approximately. And the idea is that over a number of years, they're going to drill ice cores deeper and deeper, and they want to get to a stage where the ice is 1 million years old, and they'll extract ice cores and they'll be able to, you know, look at the gases and all the things, just so many bits of information that can be analyzed from 1 million years ago. You know, so it's quite fascinating from that point of view to think that, one, that's possible. And then two, you know, what can we find out? There's just so many things along the way. It's just very telling of, you know, the past and, you know, trends and where we're at, all things compared, you know. So that's one of the major projects. Another one they're doing is the Denman Terrestrial Campaign, which is a big glacial area. And there's a lot of smaller projects that different, you know, scientists, universities, you know, lots of different entities are investigating, you know, whether it's, you know, a lot of seismic testing, glaciology, all sorts of bits and pieces like this, you know, and trying to just understand how it all works. Specifically for Davis Station, we do a lot of sea ice research. So even this morning I was out helping one of there's an engineer covering a lot of the different science projects here. And this morning we were out on the sea ice, which only opened to us to be able to travel on it a couple of weeks ago. So it's all very exciting at the moment. We can get out beyond our station walls a bit further than we have been in the past. But we were just drilling sea ice where we test how thick it is, and just lots of different measurements and bits and pieces. That's been an ongoing project for quite a number of years now that we've got a lot of data on and continuing to gather data. So as a general idea, that's kind of some of the very, you know, awesome science that they're doing down here. You know, I wish I could fully understand it. It's a bit above my pay grade, so to speak, but it's cool getting to talk to people here that can explain it to you, and they have to dumb it down a lot for me, you know, so I'm very grateful for smart people.
I've got so many questions. I was going to say, I've got so many questions just from everything that you said there. I guess the first one, though, is was the scientific part of this, was that exploration nature of this job, this role, is that one of the things that pulled you in? Were you intrigued by that part of it?
Absolutely. You know, to me, this is an opportunity to tangibly contribute skills and knowledge I have to hopefully a bigger and better future. There's so much down here that needs to be understood, and people are trying to understand it all. And it's just a way I can contribute. You go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People like to know they can contribute, and just my skill set. I'm not a scientist, and as much as I'd love to be, it's just not the career path I've chosen. So this is the way I can positively contribute my skills, to the endeavours down here that they try and achieve. If you're happy, I was circling back to your previous question. As being a carpenter down here, obviously there's scientists and science folk down here that do all their work, but it needs a whole team of people behind them in order to do that. How do you live here? How do you stay warm? How do you get water? There's much respect in the world to scientists, but other people have to kind of help work as a team so that we can all achieve the same end result. So there's multiple tradespeople here covering all the roles. So we got carpenters, plumbers, electricians, diesel mechanics, everything you need to basically make a small community run, because that's what we are. We are a small community of around 28 people, and at the moment, and we need to be self-sufficient, because at the end of the day, there's no one around us to come give us a hand. We can't ring up and say, "Hey, can you come pick me up?" We're here, and we're quite isolated, and we're here for the long haul. So we need to make it work.
Yeah. How often are there planes or boats or outside inputs in terms of people or resources?
Yeah, so there is a shipping schedule. Davis Station doesn't currently have a fully operational aerodome space for long haul flights. One of the other stations, Casey Station, does have that through parts of the year, but in the winter, basically, there's no aviation in or out. It's just the weather conditions make it very difficult to get any sort of aviation in. So basically, to get to Davis Station, we arrived on a ship, the Noina, which is Australia's newest icebreaker. It's a couple of years old now, and it took us 4 weeks to get down here on the ship. We did a little deviation because we had some science and some testing with the ship that they wanted to do with sea ice and its ice-breaking capabilities. So it was nice to just watch and, again, just see the capabilities of the ship and what it can do. It's quite amazing. It's such a multifaceted ship, and that it's got to get where it's got to get to as far as breaking ice. There's a myriad of science facilities. It also has to be a cargo ship because it resupplies every one of our stations. We have to bring every single thing down with us, from additional water, fuel, food, all the requirements for running vehicles, running a station, materials for building. Every single trade has its own materials and ongoing maintenance. There's never-ending maintenance to make sure things run, because believe it or not, the environment down here isn't friendly to things we bring down.
You had mentioned in the email that fresh water was one of the really crucial components. And when you said fresh water, I'm thinking you're on a giant icicle or ice cube in the ocean. Where is the fresh water coming from?
Exactly.
So educate me on that. Is there actual freshwater reserves that you're tapping into, or is that mostly brought in?
Yeah, so with Davis Station, where I'm located, there is no dedicated freshwater source. The reason being is we are located in an Antarctic oasis, in that it is the largest area of exposed rock in the whole continent. It's about a 15 mile by 15 mile square area that has no permanent ice on top of it. So it's rocky. We go hiking, and it's literally you're climbing over rocks for hours on end. It's incredibly tiring. So with that, there is actually no ice to melt within the immediate vicinity. And so water security here is actually quite hard because we can't get it. So what we have to do is we've got a tarn, which is like a lake, a small lake that we draw water from. And every couple of years we fill that up with ocean water. And there's about a 5 to 6 week window at the height of summer when it's melted, and we can take it into a reverse osmosis plant, desalinize it, try and add minerals and bits and pieces to make it as good as possible for consumption, obviously, because if you have really clean water, it doesn't add all the natural minerals and bits and pieces in there. So it's quite a tricky process to get it right. And so for us, we have to store all of our fresh water on site for use through the whole year, and we have a small window in order to be able to produce that. Now, to make life a little bit easier, the ship that brings us down does top up the supplies with around 100 to 200,000 litres, which is about 50,000 gallons. And so we have to be very conscious of our water usage because it's a very finite resource, and it's very hard to make any more, especially through the middle of winter. It's nigh impossible. So it's a big thing, and part of what I've been doing this year has been involved in water security. They've got some plans, and about securing a better water source for this station, but that's down the track.
That's fascinating. You've already referenced the seasons, but like most people, I'm just thinking it's just cold all the time. So what is the variance of your summer to your winter there?
Well, cold is relative.
Right.
So I found out down here. So when through the summer here, it's around, the high is about 32 Fahrenheit. And now we're starting at the start of winter, and today it was minus 13 Fahrenheit and with a wind chill of minus 31, and we were outside. You could really feel how cold it was today. But the beautiful irony of it is we've had these colder bursts, kind of working our way into the winter temperatures, and then the other day it shot right up to, it was maybe minus 20 Fahrenheit. And we were all like, oh, geez, it feels so warm, We're like taking layers of clothes off because it's still below freezing, but it was just for, it's all relative, you're just walking around in shorts and just below zero, freezing temperature. And it's like, wow. So it's all relative, but yeah. So I know last year the core temperature got down to around minus 40 Fahrenheit. I think minus 40s were Fahrenheit and Celsius meet. And yeah, so it was the coldest it's been here is minus 40, minus 41, and it got down to minus 39 last year. So it's decent.
So this is an Australian station, but I imagine that like space or like the sea at times, there are international collaborations with going to such a remote place. Is that the case there?
Yeah. So Antarctica as a whole is subject to the Antarctic Treaty, which basically means no one can claim sovereignty over the whole thing. But kind of I think it's 14 countries off the top of my head that have kind of been segmented areas within Antarctica that they are responsible for the caretakership of. And within that, areas are loaned, gifted. I don't know the exact terms in which they are given to other countries. But there's certainly other countries outside those initial Antarctic Treaty countries that are using the area for their own scientific investigations and whatnot. So the closest stations to us, there's a Russian, Chinese, and an Indian base approximately 100 miles from us. And to get there, you basically have to fly or take a ship, but we don't have any shipping facilities or flight facilities through the winter here. So, but a lot of countries do have a presence. I think off the top of my head, there's around 50 scientific research stations in Antarctica on a whole between all the countries. With America as the biggest one with McMurdo Station, which is right near the New Zealand-based Scott base, and then America has another one right at the South Pole, Scott Amundsen base. So yeah, there is quite an international presence here, but we can't exactly go and say hi to our neighbours very easily. I think we've had 2 lots of visitors. It's nice to see outside people. We get to show them around. Everyone's very intrigued just to come and have a look around. And
yeah, I mean, you said 28. Did you say 28 people?
Through the winter, there are 28 left. In the summer, we had approximately 60. So the summer is the period where we can really do a lot of work when, things are defrosted enough to really get a lot of work done around the place. And then in the winter period, it kind of goes into a period of maintenance and just keeping the lights on, as it were, and there are some other projects we can advance that aren't necessarily based outside, that'll keep us busy on top of all the regular maintenance. And, hopefully a little bit of sightseeing and exploring is fitted in there as well along the way. That's always nice.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do when your whole life is given to this cause or this purpose? On the one hand, I could see how you could just never stop working, because you're all there for this reason. The flip side is, I'm sure that there's also downtime, and boredom is a thing that sets in with the same people and the sameness. So what is that dynamic like between like work and I want to say leisure time, if that's the right way to paraphrase it, or to
everything else.
Everything else. Yeah.
How do you
yeah, maybe the question is, how do you discuss, or talk about, that extra time that you have?
Yeah, well, we have our set working hours, which is just a base framework to work from. Everyone, depending on your role, all the trades group have kind of a set working hours, but then we've got three meteorologists here who do the weather forecasting, and they release balloons all the time to test, so their schedules are different again. So the schedule's a bit fluid, apart from the trades group, which is a very locked in schedule. With that in mind, outside of that, we are a community, and the station runs with us, so we all have our own responsibilities outside of that. On the weekends, we have an allocated time where we all go out and clean certain areas. We've got different responsibilities. If there's been a big storm, we go clean the porches off all the snow so we can access. There's a lot of community type endeavours that we have to do to keep the place running safely, all the things like that. So there's never a lack of things to do as such, but then through the winter, when it slows down a lot, you are finding other things to do. So thankfully, we have pretty good facilities here, in that we've got pool table, ping pong, all the amenities, and we have a cinema. But we know ahead of time what we're getting ourselves into. So people are bringing down different things, a lot of woodworking that goes on. So one of the gentlemen here he's quite a skilled whittler, and he's been whittling all these really nice timber spoons, big soup spoons for the chefs, and then just handing them out. Myself, I bought down a whole bunch of knife blanks, and I glue together knives out of timber handles and sand them up. And one of them, my colleague, the other carpenter colleague, he made a really beautiful bedside table out of scrap timber. And it was quite fantastic to see, So they got the hobby aspects of it. It may sound a bit interesting to some people, but I fancy myself as someone who enjoys doing puzzles. So I brought down a nice big 5,000 piece puzzle, which I started a week ago, and I'm very, very, very slowly working my way through that.
Well, to go back to the what you said previously, about referencing, the hierarchy of needs, it sounds like everyone is there contributing to the community, and so there's got to be, regardless of personalities or differences, you've got this really unique opportunity to connect and depend and create a shared purpose together with these people. Yeah,
well, it's interesting because every single person here is here for different reasons. Some it's for the experience, some it's, they want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. Others, it's just for the finances, it's an interesting opportunity. So there's also a blend of motivations to be here. Thankfully, the recruitment process tries to align people that hold certain values so that there are hard times, people don't always get along, and you're not necessarily expected to, it's not a blissful kumbaya, everyone's got a difference of opinions, things happen, but you have to have the skills and abilities to be able to work through that, which, Sometimes some people have a better ability at doing that than others. Myself, I'm kind of in the middle somewhere, and it's a work in progress. So it's not a peaceful Zen place by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm thankful that through the whole recruitment process, certain personality traits are kind of highlighted that these are the sort of people we want, people that contribute to community, they're flexible, they can see the bigger goal and they like to align themselves with the bigger picture, so there's a whole bunch of different attributes there that they try and recruit for. And thankfully, at least for my year, I can't comment on other years because I wasn't there, but for our year, it's by and large, it's quite a good community of people, that got each other's backs. It's not without our niggles. It's funny when you start living with people that aren't your family. It's surprising the things that start to get on your nerves. Like people whistling down the hallway every single day. It's like, since when has whistling been a bugbear of mine? And you find out down here, well, someone that constantly whistles, I would have a hard time living with them because I currently am. The other ones are, people that like to slam doors and the ones that don't. You certainly find out those with heavy feet. All the little nuances that you don't necessarily consider. And then it's like, okay, this is getting on my nerves. How do we address this without, being politically correct and treating everyone with respect, especially if they don't recognize what they're doing? How do you bring it up? So it's very dynamic and ongoing. It's an ongoing family relationship that you're just going to have to work through the ins and outs of, which we've all experienced in one way or another. It's just a different dynamic of family.
Yeah, well, at this point, I would say that our shared history of tour life together certainly seemed like it would be an asset in such a situation, because when you've practiced for, at least a few years to a decade of, a dozen people living on a tour bus or close proximity, that the situation you're in right now would be a little bit easier to step into than someone who hasn't had that sort of experience.
I feel like it certainly gave me a really good foresight of what was to come. I think the thing with our previous experiences is that they're reasonably short windows of, 2, 3, 4 week periods where we were all bunched together. This is for an entire year, and it's just a whole different level again. So I certainly appreciate the knowledge and the understanding that I knew kind of what I was getting into. But I think probably, speaking of our previous experiences, the thing that it most prepared me for, that I'm incredibly grateful for, is just being separated from family, which I'm sure you can understand is something incredibly difficult and something that most people either can't do or really wouldn't want to do. Not that I want to do it, but it is one of the big sacrifices and decisions that had to be made through this whole process. So, it's probably the big thing. I'm thankful for those years where we traveled together and we're in very tight-knit communities.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. Let's get into, I want to get into motivation for this thing. You said that that this all started with a Facebook ad. And I want to walk through the whole process of like making that decision with your family, because it's a huge commitment and sacrifice, so take us back to the start, like of the inception of the possibility of this thing.
Well, I think prior to the actual idea of going to Antarctica, I think there's a lot of different people types in this world, and you've got the very driven, motivated people that see their goal and they hammer and tong for it and nothing else gets in their way. That's not so much my personality and how I approach. I'm kind of I walk the path, and then this opportunity presents here, this opportunity presents here, and time again, at the right time, the right moment, just these amazing opportunities have popped up through my whole life. And it's like, oh yeah, let's grab that opportunity. Let's give that a go. We'll see. We'll follow that path. And, that doesn't float everyone's boat, but for me and my family, that's kind of a lot of how we've approached it, with a bit of proactive thinking. Sometimes you do need to be a moving car in order to steer it, but, we're not staying still. But in this case, it was certainly a moment that where an opportunity presented itself, and I'm like, hey, wouldn't that be cool? So it was literally in January, and we're in January in Australia. We have 6 weeks of school holidays. It's kind of our summer period, our summer holidays. So it's quite a relaxed time of year. And working for myself, I was taking a little bit of extra time off with the family, and I was flicking through Facebook as you do, and then randomly, out of nowhere, this ad's like, "Do you want to work in Antarctica? Are you a tradesman that wants to work in Antarctica?" And I was like, "Well, yes, actually, that'd be very interesting. I've never considered it before. I did not even know they had tradespeople in Antarctica. This was the very first I've heard of it." So I am, as far as Facebook goes, I'm quite a pessimist as far as being clickbaited and all these things. I do not click on anything ever. This is literally the only ad I've ever clicked on, and this is where it's led me. So it's a beautifully ironic story. But yeah, so it's basically Alice in Wonderland, just going down the rabbit hole and seeing where we ended up. So I literally clicked on the ad, and it was at the end of their recruitment campaign. I had 2 nights to try and get my whole application and resume together. It was quite a large, exhaustive process. And so I literally just crammed everything I could within the time I had. I didn't even feel like it was a great application, to be honest, but I made it past the first recruitment period stage, and I got on to the next one. And the next one was just an online medical test. You just fill out all your family history and stuff just to make sure there's certain things that are not compatible with down here. And I passed that one, and then the next one is like, it's a stage after stage. You have in person group interviews, and they like to see how all the people work together, their group dynamics, and are you flexible? How do you interrelate to each other? And they just use that. It's an assessment center, basically. They're just throwing scenarios out there, creating opportunities for conversation, and just to see how you react and work with other people. And I passed that stage. And then there was online technical interviews, and it's just a stage after stage after stage after stage is like, I'm getting through. How is this happening? And all this through this whole process, it was funny when I clicked on the ad. I mentioned it to my wife, and I was like, I clicked on it and I said, "Hey, I'm going to apply for a job in Antarctica," and she just rolled her eyes and was like, "Okay, dear, whatever you say." Was basically at the inception point, and I was like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? They say no, fully not expecting to get anywhere, and then stage by stage, I kept getting through to the next level, and as that happened, the internal excitement in me was building. It's like, this actually could happen, and then kind of halfway through the recruitment process, I was feeling just, actually, if I don't get this now, I'm actually going to be quite gutted and put out, because what hadn't even crossed my mind prior was now this opportunity to go to somewhere that hardly anyone gets to go to. And that idea really excited me, just to be able to come down here to experience. I'm all about going and experiencing things, seeing things that people don't get to see, and that, I think, on top of being able to contribute to something bigger than myself, that was the other driving motivator for me, was going somewhere that very few people have stepped foot on. The idea that, when we go out and explore, we have a certain area that we get to explore, but I could physically be the only person that's ever stepped foot on this piece of land. It's quite a feasible idea, yeah. And that, into my mind, just the adventure and that, and the exploration. There's not much exploration being done as such, but it's nice to just put that in your mind and make you feel all exploratory.
Absolutely. Well, and even the way that you're describing the process, I resonate with what you're talking about and how you approach life. That switch between, oh, this would be fun to do, and oh, something inside me actually really wants this, and now I'm excited about it. Like, those are the moments that that are really telling, I think, and are telling you, yeah, this is the right path. Like, go for it. You know,
Mm,
when you've got that building excitement, anticipation,
mm.
those are the times to follow it, you know, and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and that's kind of how I've had trying to explain my life up until this point. It's such a non-linear, for want of a better word, career path. I've played collegiate baseball. I've tour managed for a band, and now I'm a carpenter in Antarctica. Just all these different things that make no sense logically, but from each phase of life, there's just been key elements that have all built up to where I am now, and no doubt where I am now will again build up to something else that's just left of center again. It's very exciting. I have no idea what's going to happen after this year, and bring it on. I have a basic plan where I can get by and make a living, but who's to say what's the next opportunity that'll pop its head up?
I love
But
that. I love that.
it's yeah, I don't know. It's not a common way people like to live their lives, but it's worked for us, and just to try that thing, give it a go. What's this opportunity? I don't know. Let's give it a go. What's the worst that could happen, And it hasn't set us wrong yet. So,
Well, but I imagine, um, you know, what started with your wife as a bit of an eye roll at some point became real. And so,
mhm,
talk to me about, surely at some point, the reality of a year and being separated from your
mhm,
family, like those things start to sink in.
mm,
Talk me through those conversations or that process.
yeah, yeah. So that was a big journey. That was a very big journey, and if I'm being completely honest, it's probably been my biggest growth area is building that aspect of our relationship. I give all the credit to my wife. She is an amazing woman, and lot smarter than me. Her EQ is a lot higher than me. Her emotional intelligence, her ability to relate to people. She's just very good at that stuff. And so I think it was me coming up to her level to try and navigate this whole stage in our life, and like you said, so and initially it was just another one of Jared's crazy ideas, so um, and we just ran with it. But then, like you said, there was a stage of realization. Okay, this is actually starting to get serious, and so then it's a bunch of what if questions. So if this does happen, what's it going to look like? My wife, she likes to think ahead, and likes to have plan A, B, C, D. So we're just talking through, if this happens, what does life look like? And so we kind of had this loose idea. I'd applied, and when I applied for the summer season, which is a 4 or 5 month stint. And the big curveball in the mix was basically they offered me a job, but they didn't have a summer job available. They only had a full winter one. And that was turned it from a 4 to 5 month stint in Antarctica to well over a year. And especially when you include training, the training period, it's nearly a year and a half of being in another city, being in Antarctica. So there's a lot of separation there, and it's been hard, and just walking through that journey. And I think through the whole process, myself and my wife, we've always known that we're going to be okay. We dated long distance for a year and a half when we were dating, and with all our previous travels, with touring and stuff like that, we know we've got the skill set to manage it. But now there's kids involved. We got two kids, 10 and 12, and how is that going to affect them? I think one of the other big motivating factors was doing something that my kids can see me do, and not so much pass or fail, but see me try. That was the big thing for me, just me stepping out and trying to do something incredible, something amazing. Just try. You never know. And then it got to a stage where I was happy that I was giving it a go, and I knew they saw that. But then it came to a point where actually, if it doesn't happen now, I would be disappointed, but I would actually be more disappointed for them just not seeing it go through. It may not necessarily, that thought may not necessarily sink in for some people, but it was actually a fear that if it didn't go ahead, I was actually going to feel really bad for my kids in that they wouldn't see their dad just to do amazing things. I want to show them that they can do amazing things. They can think, whatever they see, whatever they think, they can do it. So a lot of my drive was focused on them for that reason. But in doing so and doing this journey, are we going to hurt them? Are we going to hinder them? And that's a very real, tangible thing, being separated. And then my 12-year-old is coming up to being a teenager, and then the whole teenage years are a whole different beast in and of itself. So I'm told, I can only reflect on my own journey, but we're definitely already getting the teenage eye rolls and a bit of the attitude, in amongst their personality of being incredibly smart, wonderful children. So, and then on top of all that, my wife on her own managing that aspect of our family with myself being so far away, there's just so many things to factor in. And my wife being so intuitive, we tried to foresee as much of the potential pitfalls and issues and talk it out between us two. And then even with the kids, just having certain little conversations, nothing too heavy and specific, just because they don't necessarily see that far ahead and can't necessarily anticipate how they're going to feel. We can think about it and understand, well, they're probably going to feel this and think that. But yeah, there's a lot of forethought and just trying to seed conversation, seed ideas, what it may look like, through that whole journey. I think the saving grace for us, and we were really unsure. We've been told that the communications down here can be quite difficult as far as internet access. And just being able to communicate basically was on telephones only. You could do kind of VoIP calls and stuff like that. But it wasn't until we got down here we found out, well, there actually wasn't an ability to video call, which we are so grateful for because, we can do this. I can see my family, and admittedly, it can be quite hard because there's 28 people here and we only have a small bandwidth of, internet access. And so if there's too many people online at once, it drops out pretty quickly. There's not a lot of forgiveness when it comes to that sort of thing. So if we're going to watch TV shows, we can't all go to our rooms and stream our own Netflix. We all kind of got to band together and all this sort of stuff. But one of the key points, actually, now that I think about it, with our children, we've always, how do you teach your kids the hard lessons in life? You see so many kids, they'll go through a really hard time, whether it's a breakup in the family or health issues or just the myriad of issues that cause havoc on families these days. And it teaches kids strength and resilience, but there's also a lot of negative aspects that come along with those experiences. And so we've kind of racked our brain for a long time. Well, how do you teach your kids those lessons and not be I'm not a big fan of being a helicopter parent, so we try not to be a helicopter parent that's hovering over them and cuddling them and making, they have to go out and experience. And thinking about this whole process, this has kind of been one of the main things for me is that if we go through this process, we can help teach our kids resilience as far as being separated, but we're still together. So being very proactive in the conversations. And again, I'm not good at this, and it takes a lot of time and effort for me to try and think things through. And again, I'm very grateful for my wife. She's got such great intuition for this. She will. I don't like to admit it, and hopefully she's not listening, but she kind of gives me leading conversations, leading questions to help me think and to help me do and ask the right things, because it's just not my skill set. So, and I think that was one of the big things, is that this is an opportunity to teach our kids those big life skills that, resilience is one of those things that it's very hard to come by. And teach it in a way that doesn't actually hurt them. from a big negative life event, and helping them understand their emotions, experience grief, missing someone, and I wasn't actually privy to the day, but it was leading up to my departure was incredibly hard for all of them, and there was constant tears for weeks on end, spontaneously for no reason. Lots of emotional ups and downs and just confusion, misunderstanding.
or
And
for very good reason, you might say.
yeah,
I know
100%.
I know what you mean. How those
Yeah,
things can pop up out of nowhere, but like when you're undertaking what you're taking on, it actually is like quite normal that like you've got these things underneath you.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, when you say it's normal through the training process, they actually say, at the start of the journey, as far as a happiness sort of scale, happiness and well-being and emotional stability, the family are down low, and the expeditioner that's going is up high. And then through the year process, they kind of come to this transition point where they start getting better, they get their life rhythms happening, homes settled and sorted. But then as my season goes on, we come into winter. We're with a whole bunch of people who aren't technically our family. We've got all the conversations and things that get on your nerves, as well as just missing family. So there's kind of this transition point where myself, and I'm certainly starting to feeling it now, I can certainly see the pangs of it, it becomes harder for me. And then as time comes closer to me going home, there's levels of anxiety, fitting back into society, fitting back into my home. I will be quite honest and vulnerable here. It's been quite hard seeing my family do so well back home, because it's like, am I needed? Am I needed at home because they are doing so well without me? What is my purpose and place in this home? And there's some insecurities there that kind of tap on the mind as like plays funny mind tricks with you, And then when it comes to the stage of when I actually do have to come back home, the family's got their rhythms. It's like almost a stranger stepping into the household, and they've got their new rhythms, their new daily routines, and we have to be aware. We've been told and prepared for this. I have not experienced it yet, but yeah, coming back in and fitting into that has to be a long, gentle, understanding process, because, again, it's kind of a period of turmoil that you have to re-navigate is the coming back together phase. And I'll let you know how that goes in about 7 or 8 months' time. We can plan, think, and prepare, but
Sure.
until you've actually walked through it, it's all speculation. So.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said. I really appreciate the parenthood side of it, and considering resiliency and the right balance of those things, right? Because it's it's easy to you mentioned helicopter parenting, or like that certainly is one side of it. But then there's the other side of like when you want your children to learn resiliency. That's, I think, I'm with you. I want my children to feel like they're capable and they're strong and they can take on, challenges and be inspired and go for it. But then there's also, you don't want to necessarily just create struggle or things that are too hard, for children either, So finding that balance is really tricky as a parent. But I really appreciate what you said, and living the example of that is such a powerful thing. I think about that all the time, that as a person and as a parent, oftentimes my actions are much more of a statement than what I might say, right? My kids are picking up on how I am and what I'm doing more than what I might be telling them or trying to reinforce, intellectually, like in their mind, And so I think it's like I really appreciate how you're sharing that, because it's like what you're giving to them, I see as a gift, and who knows like what they'll take with that example and that lesson. But cheers to you for that.
I mean, it's all good. Just wait, and they'll start taking all your traits and what you do, and they'll throw it back in your face soon. They'll use your own arguments and everything against you. So just be warned.
Oh, for sure.
That's what we're finding.
Yeah. Well, and you never know which way it could go. It could be, Dad Dad went on this amazing adventure. I'm really happy and fine to just to have my quiet life in the country and not make things too complicated, which is perfectly fine too.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think one of the things my wife is fantastic at is she gives them the ability to use their voice. So often, and I'm incredibly guilty of this. As far as they'll come back and they'll respond. I don't want to do that. Why can't we do that? And it's like, no, that's it. I'm the boss. I'm the parent. You listen to me. And instead of her approach, and that she does so well, is there's a conversation that's had. Rationalizing, understanding, and a conversation. It allows them to voice their opinion, have confidence to voice their opinion, and recognize when they're right, when they're wrong, and just all that level of communication at such a young age, and giving them the ability to choose and decide, make life choices for themselves. So we're kind of at an age now where my son, he's able to go out, and we're lucky where we live. There's bush, there's beaches. They can go out and explore. And just giving them the freedom to make choices, make wise choices. And you always kind of hope that the choices they make aren't going to have any dire consequences, and they haven't. And there's been little misadventures, but in my mind, that's what it's all about. Learning by doing, going out and being, experiencing. Me being here is experiencing it. You can read a book, but until you know what Antarctica smells like, you've never really experienced it. So that's kind of what we try to replicate in our kids, is just giving them an opportunity to learn to make their own decisions, because as they become adults, if they can't make their own decisions, if they're not confident in raising their voice when it's needed to be heard, with respect, of course, you don't want to be the loudest person in the room, and you always want to be able to listen, but being able to do that, I can already see just the manner in which they've grown and where they're at right now. I just look at them and I'm just amazed, and again, 99.9% of the credit to my wife on that one, but it's just, yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah. I mean, we live in an age where we've got information at our fingertips, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We've got experiences on a screen that can take us anywhere around the world. But oftentimes, our experiences can be like going to the restaurant and eating the menu as if you're experiencing what's actually offered, but you got to eat the food to actually experience the real thing.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
And what you're doing right now, and what you're talking about doing with your kids, is giving them that experience, giving them those possibilities of like exercising that muscle, that like you need for the rest of your life to be a human, and to go out and to make your own choices.
And just to participate in the world. You're just trying to give them the skill sets. We don't really, in my mind at the moment, they can be whatever they want. And there's I don't have any preconcepts about what they should be. What's more important to us is who they are, how they show up in their world, in their sphere, for themselves, for the family, for other people. We highly value that as a family, showing up for people. So to us, their character is more important than what they do. So everything we do and decide is kind of more pointed towards that, as opposed to, they could be a doctor, they could be a surgeon, they could be whatever they want to be, and that's okay, whatever you make it. I think the way, this is a much bigger idea and a bigger conversation, but the way society is heading and the way careers and jobs are looking in the next 20 to 50 years, it's all changing again, so having a single career may not be the way forward, but who knows? There's so many things changing with, how people run, how AI, all the things,
Right.
So we figure if you can give them the ability to think, to communicate, and make great decisions, the rest will sort itself out.
Well, and adapt and evolve. And I mean, I think that's when I look at you, that's what I see is a friend who has adapted, who's involved, who's who's followed a passion, who's followed that excitement when it calls, from like you said, from playing college, from growing up in Australia to moving to the States to play college ball, to becoming a tour manager. I've seen you from your health journey, your CrossFit, experience, like how you've created a new identity in that, and now this new career that's taking you to, the bottom of the world. It's just remarkable, man.
Isn't that what everyone does? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it's strange. I can't put words to it. It's this weird inner knowing. When these opportunities pop up, it's like that would be really cool. Just to be original, do something different. Don't go with the flow. And that's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's right for me. And if anyone else wants to see, hear, listen, and do, then more than happy to discuss it further.
So inspiring, man. So inspiring. I would be remiss not to just say I appreciate all of your photography that you've been sharing. I grew up in Michigan, the northern area of the States. And so seeing the quote unquote Northern Lights was always a treat to try to hunt out. And it took me a while to consider that the North is not the only place that you can see that sort of those sorts of spectacular displays. And
North and South.
Yeah. But that has been one of the most envious that I found, is like when I'm seeing some of the photos that that you've taken of what you're seeing and what you're experiencing there. I mean, it must feel like you're on another planet at times.
Oh, and it absolutely does. It's such a crazy continent. The irony of it is, like I said before, we're in an Antarctic oasis where our particular station is. So for 10, 15 miles in any direction, it's rocky hills. And it does snow and we get all that, but it's not what people typically foresee as Antarctica. There is a massive continent full of ice. Don't get me wrong, but what we're seeing here, you can see the plateau on the horizon, but it's so different here. And the photos, I've been putting stuff up and people look at it and they're like, this doesn't match my pre-concept of being in Antarctica, where's all the ice? So it's been an interesting photography journey for me, trying to capture penguins, but there's a rocky background. So what's going on here? Where's all the ice? Where's all the snow? It's interesting, but it's the last 2 months, the auroras have started making an appearance because we've gotten to where it's been dark enough to do so. During the summer we have 6 weeks of full light, and we're working towards 6 weeks of approximate dark with a little bit of twilight in the middle of the day. But I love my photography, and I love getting out there and just capturing nature.
Yeah. Is it as vivid as the photos that you capture sometimes, or are you needing to set that long exposure to get it more vibrant?
There is a little bit of fudging there with the long exposures. It does suck more light in, and you see more colors. But on a really big aurora night, you'll still see the greens. There was one I was photographing. I just had to stop photographing, and I just took it in because it was just spectacular. The greens, I could see purples, I could see reds, and those aren't as common. Because most nights down here, if you work the lens, you can try and find something. But the ones that, like, you can see with your naked eye, it's just mind-blowing. I was taking photos. I had to stop, and I just laid down flat on my back, looked up at the ceiling, up at the sky for half hour, and just sat there and enjoyed it. Just everything was dancing all over the place, just colors and movement. It was bright enough that I was able to FaceTime my wife, and through the grainy iPhone video, she could see it too, which kind of blows my mind as well. Wow. That's awesome. It's amazing down here. Just so many different things that just you never see anywhere else, and just trying to capture that and just share what I see through my eyes. Every photographer down here has a different set of lenses, and they see things in different ways. And I love it.
Yeah, just taking it in, I think, is good advice. I'm taken back to Well, it was actually the first trip I think I took with you and a group of Aussie friends in to Rome, Italy. I was reminded.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had a day off, and I was strolling around, and Dave Watson, our friend, was going to be with me, and he saw me grab my camera. This is a little bit before nice camera phones, and he's like, "Oh, you're just going to want to put that away." He's like, first time that you're in Rome, you're just going to want to take photos of everything. So you need to just put it away and just experience the city and enjoy
it in.
and take it in. And and that was such a gift because he was right. Like I would have been distracted just taking a photo of everything and not actually taking it in and experiencing it myself,
100%. And it's funny because there's a whole bunch of auxiliary roles on station that you can do, and one of them is the station photographer, and I put my hand up for it and I got chosen to be the station photographer. So I've been lucky enough to be taking photos for around 15 years now. I've got a reasonable amount of knowledge on technically how to do photos, and so I was taking everyone through a couple of educational sessions, and that was one of the things I really tried to drill home is don't forget to stop and participate in the moment. It's funny, you were with all the touring we did in the past, and even now you look at, all the concerts and venues, and it's just a sea of phones, and I find it terribly ironic that someone's got this video of a moment that they didn't actually participate in and probably won't ever look at again, maybe more than a handful of times. And it's for me, that's just something that I always have to stop and take a note of, is like, stop, put it down, here we are. What's going on, enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy the art, enjoy the culture, enjoy the moment, the colors, the nature. Learn to see it, learn to appreciate it, learn to just let it sit in there, and with the hustle and bustle of life, especially in a metropolitan area, that can be quite hard just because your senses kind of become a little bit immune to not seeing it. You head down, walking forward, stop, look around, take it in. And I'm not the most creative person in the world, and there are a lot of creative types who are just kind of, ooh, a butterfly, just following the wind. So it's trying to ride that balance for me, keeping a grounded head, but also being able to stop and smell the roses, get the smells, get the tastes, get the sights and the sounds, and just appreciating it. A never ending something to work on. It never ends. Just learning to finally attune that.
Well said. Well said. Man, Jared, what you're doing is really inspiring. I love seeing this adventure that you've been on from afar, and it's been really amazing to chat with you and to connect, man. It's been so long since we've seen each other or talked. I'm grateful for this time to just to share and to hear about what you're experiencing, because it's really remarkable, man. I mean, who knows what's next, but you're going to look back for the rest of you. Well, I really think you're going to look back on this for the rest of your life. And,
absolutely.
Not that there aren't other great things ahead of you, or even bigger experiences or bigger adventures. It'll just be different. But yeah, you're going to be grateful for this for the rest of your life. And that's such a good example for me. And I think for anyone else that's watching. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I'm actually humbled.
Well, what is remind me, this is the end of your day?
Yeah, so it's what is it, 8 p.m. at night now?
Yeah.
And it's been dark for about 5 or 6 hours now, so
that's
you lose track of time. So the sun rises at about 10 a.m. in the morning and sets at 4:30, 5 p.m. at the moment. And then in another 4 or 5 weeks' time, it'll be nigh on dark most of the day.
Yeah.
Which is great for aurora photography.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I'm going to let you go, man, and I'm going to get started over here in my day. But I'm really glad that we got to talk, man. And best to you and best to your family and the whole crew out there. I hope the rest of your time out there is safe. And just a great experience. All right, that's it for today. If you want to stay connected with what Jared is doing, I encourage you to check out theantarcticblog.com. There are links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.